Friends of recently ousted former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy are livid at Democrats for failing to back him amid his historic ejection. But Democrats are adamant the GOP has no one to blame but themselves. This is according to The Hill.
And while the Republicans are enduring a proverbial civil war, Democrats seem to be in lockstep. Here's MSNBC pointing out just that fact.
I think Sahil had the tweet of the day, actually, where he tweeted and he underscored that Speaker Nancy Pelosi, when she was Speaker, had the exact same very slim margin that Kevin McCarthy did. And for all the hemming and hawing that a number of progressives did do privately, nothing like this ever happened while she was Speaker of the House.
And can one make, we hear all the time the far right and the far left, but even the most progressive members of Congress, Simone, you can't point to anything that they're simply trying to blow up the system, cause chaos, bedlam, or paralysis, which is exactly where the House is right now.
The Gray Zone's Max Blumenthal noted on X, it was always unreasonable to expect the squad to do to Pelosi what Gates did to McCarthy. They're moved by an aspiration to celebrity lacking in political education, and the progressive forces that brought them to power protected them from pressure from Jimmy Dore and others. It's hard to disagree with that. I was one of the people who really wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt, thinking that maybe they just made a mistake or cowed to pressure as junior members of Congress in the beginning, and that maybe they'd find their footing and rebound. But all we've seen throughout the entire Biden administration, and frankly, through the entire duration of the squad members being in office, is that there's a fundamental unwillingness to do anything to advance the interests of the people that elected them if it comes at the expense of the party itself. And from the perspective of an outsider, insurgent, progressive race, which is what they all had, fronted by people like Justice Democrats, the leaders of which have said very clearly the whole point of running these candidates was to get someone in Congress with an adversarial relationship with the Democratic Party so they could push it to the left instead of only having people with an adversarial relationship like Manchin and Sinema who push it to the right. You need a counterbalance. That was their job. That was their one job. And when you hear them talking about this Matt Gaetz situation, they say over and over again, well, they're in disarray, we're in lockstep. I would never do anything to jeopardize the party. They are saying out loud, loud and clear, they care about the party more than any of the discrete issues some of us were advocating they champion during our own force the vote moment 2 years ago. And I'm at least glad it's out in the open. They're being honest. You can support them if you like Democrats. They will advance a Democratic Party agenda. But as we know from the Princeton study that I talk about every other day from 2014, there is no relationship between what Congress legislates and what the people want. So they're basically admitting that they've abandoned the base that got them into office in the first place.
Yeah, and I do think it's slightly overstating it to say that the Democrats are always in lockstep because, again, talking about that whole force the vote moment, there's a very clear distinction between the rules that then Speaker Pelosi had in place and the rules that McCarthy had to agree to. But you had then Speaker Pelosi saying, don't embarrass Biden, we have to vote on this, talking about how she's this master negotiator and all this stuff. But it was still the members of the squad that blocked her from pushing the Biden agenda forward before he went on that trip to Europe, where she was like, we're going to have this done before you take off for Europe. We're going to have this done before Air Force One lands in Europe. And every single time she couldn't do it, despite the president going to Capitol Hill, her, again, sort of scolding them, saying, don't embarrass President Biden, which, again, I think points to the values. Who are you worried about? You're worried about embarrassing President Biden versus delivering for the American people. But this idea that the Democrats in Congress, specifically the House, have not caused problems. And even to the right, in the Senate, you have Manchin and Sinema who have caused a lot of problems for Democrats as well. This idea that they're always in lockstep is just not true. The difference is Pelosi had rules that protected her power by not having, again, what Speaker McCarthy had, which was one single member of the House could bring a motion to vacate, and that had all the Democrats pile on. And so she was immune from a lot of the risk that McCarthy had because it took so many more people.
That rule only existed because they forced the vote in January. They got that rule. And progressives could have gotten that rule too if they had forced the vote. So that rule did not exist until the Freedom Caucus said, because of the narrow majorities, they only had a 4-vote majority. Because of the narrow majorities, we only need a handful of us to say we will not vote for Kevin McCarthy, and then we won't have a speaker. That's what it was. And to get Kevin McCarthy as speaker, he had to make those concessions. He made the concession that any one person can bring a motion to vacate. So that then They lobbied for more power using this one little moment of power. This is what's so important. This is what, I'm sorry, like this was why force the vote is literally genius. And a lot of these other like force the vote moments, there are bigger things at stake than whether or not someone is Speaker of the House. You can and should, I would argue, threaten to tank the COVID relief bill over whether or not it has a $15 minimum wage in it. You can and should threaten to tank Biden's entire Build Back Better package if it's not meaningful and if it becomes bifurcated, let's say. You can and should be willing to do those things. But you do have to then make the argument to the American people why your priority is worth the cost to them of not getting the COVID relief package out or whatever it is. When it comes to the fight over the speakership, it's literally whether a lady nobody liked in Nancy Pelosi, who polls showed at the time 3/4 of Americans wanted to step down, over whether a lady nobody likes gets a gavel. And in the Speaker McCarthy situation, it's the same thing. How many Americans, gun to their head, could tell you who Kevin McCarthy is?
Yeah.
I'm guessing fewer than 5%. And most of those people are in like a 10-mile radius of where we're sitting right now. So at the end of the day, you're sacrificing very little, but it's an opportunity to get power for yourself to then advocate for more things going forward. And they did exactly that. They got some movement on getting single issue bills voted on. So we have some clarity about what people really believe in and what they just posture to believe in. And they got, importantly, the ability to do this motion to vacate. Progressives could have gotten that too and been in the exact same situation. But at the end of the day, Mama Bear was able to rally the troops either through threatening them, whatever it is. And we're seeing the same kind of threats happening on the right? You're seeing all of these establishment Republicans line up on Fox News and saying, we gotta challenge every single one of the 8 that didn't vote for McCarthy. We gotta get them out of Congress next term. They're fundraising against them already. Someone tried to, on MSNBC, Caitlin Collins was talking to Mace from South Carolina, saying you're hypocritical for fundraising off of this after saying it was bad that Kevin McCarthy was fundraising after the first force the vote moment in January. She's like, it's not hypocritical for me. They have explicitly said they're coming for me because I stood up for what I thought was right and didn't vote for Kevin McCarthy to be Speaker of the House. So like they will come for you. Yeah. And you have to be willing to stand up for that. And it's very clear that the squad members either felt so insecure in their position or so cowed by Nancy Pelosi, or simply just don't have the courage that Nancy Mace has to stand up for the things that they said were the core motivators for them getting into office in the first place. AOC said, I would rather be a one-term congresswoman than give up on my values. That's not how it has played out.
No, I don't think she actually meant that. I think most people, even if they come to Washington with the best of intentions, we see that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Once you end up on one of these committees, you've got the power, you can subpoena people, you can do all this stuff. People are coming to you offering, what do you need in order to vote for this? That just completely eats away at that. And you have, by the time she had been in Congress for a year or two, she has a Tesla parked outside of the Whole Foods owned by Amazon in this tower of millennial decadence down in Navy Yard. And so it's very clear that most of these people don't actually mean what they say. They're saying what they need to say in order to get elected. Obviously, her upset was stunning for the Democrat establishment, but ultimately, how long did it take her to basically just fall back into that exact same thing? And while I, as a conservative, am all for more Democrats in disarray and people holding Nancy Pelosi or whoever the next Democrat Speaker of the House may be, I am all about the chaos and seeing this sort of stuff melt down because, again, it ends up just laying bare so much of what I often say is you can't trust the government. The government is not your friend. Let's watch them and see, again, what their values are, as I was talking about Pelosi back when she was Speaker, again, her main priority was not embarrassing Joe Biden, and she believed that that was a compelling point that would get all these people to get in line and vote the way she wanted to in order to move this off the floor, deliver a win, so she could go to the White House and have this big fancy signing ceremony with the President of the United States and sort of hold up her end of the bargain that she probably felt she was owed by her work to get Joe Biden elected over many candidates who probably would have done a heck of a better job and been a heck of a lot more coherent with their policy. Yeah,
I mean, speaking of House valuations because of the Donald Trump fraud case, it's worth remembering that Feinstein, who just passed away, spent however many years in Congress earning a $175,000 salary, a good salary, but a upper middle class salary, and died with a home that was worth $21 million.
The American
dream. Now, you
dream.
tell me what the incentives are in Congress. You tell me what Nancy Pelosi's real incentives are as she continues to fail to bring a floor vote when she was Speaker, refused to bring a floor vote on the enormously popular bills to stop insider trading. Said when she was first in Congress 30 years before, I'm the first AOC. I championed Medicare for all. How's that going?
Yeah.
Refuses to bring a floor vote on that. You have any number of Democrats who fundraise on the idea that they like these progressive policies and then get into office, take pharmaceutical money, and can it. But they get to say, because there's never a vote, that I like X, Y, and Z. All of these Republicans right now get to posture, oh, yes, we're the anti-war party, until it comes down to brass tacks. And we realize that there are maybe 8, maybe 15 in the wings that really will put their money where their mouth is. And frankly, this is a lesson for the American people. When you are choosing who to send to Congress, do you want to send someone who's going to be a consensus candidate that's going to vote for the war machine? Or do you want to try to send somebody who is financially independent, who isn't taking corporate dollars, and who somehow is beholden to you because you're willing to vote them right back out if they don't go in there and do what AOC said she was going to do, which was to, quote, cause a ruckus?
Not much of a ruckus apart from between her and Nancy Pelosi that then turns into no actual real action, right?
Yeah, and tweets.
Tweets, it could be the way to make policy. But I think you're right. I mean, one of the bigger issues is just the fact that this incumbent advantage that we have, if you look at polls, if you ask the average American, do you approve or disapprove of Congress? People feel better about thinking about a root canal than they do thinking about Congress as an institution. But
why is that?
But when they get into the ballot box, into the ballot, they're voting for their member of Congress. They're like, oh, my member of Congress is an incumbent. That's good, because the connection isn't that their member is the problem. And so they have the safety. And because of the incumbent advantage, that's why AOC's election in the first place was such a shock.
Yeah.
But now again, she can basically do what she wants and expect that she's going to have re-election after re-election after re-election until the next version of her comes along and does to her what she did.
But I want to be clear. She won. She was able to beat one of the most powerful Democrats in the House. He was in line to be Speaker of the House, Joe Crowley, because she was saying that she was going to do what Matt Gaetz is doing. And so I do think it is possible to beat incumbents. It is possible to win if you really carry the flag of the people. People respond to that. People will throw money at you. I was talking to a progressive yesterday, and we were both saying, like, if the squad members had done what Matt Gaetz has done, we would have devoted our lives to them. We would have emptied our pocketbooks for them. We would have been like, okay, the revolution is on. Let's get back on the Bernie train. We're going to keep fighting. We're going to do this. But instead, we got, and one of the prominent detractors from the progressive force of vote movement was a left podcaster with a pretty significant audience on a show called Majority Report, formerly on MSNBC. So some people question his progressive bona fides, but putting that to the side. He admitted to me in a debate that we had contemporaneously that someone from Congress, someone from somewhere, had called him and told him to lay off of talking about force the vote. And there's a way that people can use access journalism. These Congress members, they can try to create influence. They never come on left media anymore. Glenn Greenwald just tweeted out an interview he did with AOC at The Intercept back in like 2018 when she was running. It was, I think, her second big interview. Her first big interview was with Jimmy Dore, who she, of course, would never go on a show now because he hates her guts. I mean, over this force the vote moment. And, they have withdrawn from us, and I think go regularly on these mainstream channels in a way that really reflects where their interest lies, where their bread and butter lies. They no longer have to get these small dollar donations from the likes of the people in the district. She has a national platform. People love her. She's in the cover of Vogue magazine, all of this kind of stuff. And they really aren't beholden to us. So I think there's an organizational challenge of how do you keep the person you send to Congress beholden to the organization that sent them there? Are you willing to actually challenge them? Is the DSA and these other groups that put her in there, are they at the end of the day going to be willing to front a challenger to try to take her out because she no longer listens to them and she's betrayed so many of the ideals? Or are they going to let the tail wag the dog of the organization? And Kevin McCarthy is going to be in the same situation. I would say it's in his best interest to keep doing what the people want, because otherwise he's out there really alone and he won't be able to fundraise and he won't be able to do anything. So even if he's cynical and doesn't believe any of the things that he's saying, he will be in better standing if he keeps talking about corruption, naming names, going after the hypocrisy of the Republican Party, who said they want to cut spending, but instead vote for more war and more military spending. Stay on that. And there's no telling how long this could go.
Yeah. It depends on whether or not he ends up being invited to the Met Gala, I suppose. Would he wear a dress, though? That's the real question. We will wait and see. Until then, more Rising after this.